Dear students, subscribers and the viewers, welcome to the IAS Mentor. This would be our lecture number 38 in the series Indian Polity. So today I wanted to discuss an important topic which is related to the rights of the minorities, that is the cultural and the educational rights of minorities, which includes both Article 29 and Article 30 of the Constitution. We'll just get into that. Before we get into that, I wanted to extremely thank the students for their immense response that they have been showing in terms of the message that students are sending personally to me, and I'm quite sure that this series is extremely going to be useful for the students preparing for UPSC examination and of course for the other competitive examination in terms of your conceptual clarity, in terms of your revision for the students who have already done the foundation or already taken any formal coaching, or if they have self-study also. So keep watching this particular series for the maximum benefit that you can get from the series. Now before I get into the topic again, it is also part of the larger objective of this particular series is to brief you about the various requirements for the examination. It is not just giving the content, because many times the students can observe a lot of content but still they do not understand the minute nuances which is required for the examination. So that is also the larger objective to let you know as to what you should do, what you should not do, probably what will help you in clearing the examination much sooner, what will help you in scoring well in certain areas, because a lot of experience, it takes a lot of experience to learn all those things. And in fact, I have spent almost 15 years right now. I have been as a student for 7 to 8 years. I have been teacher for more than 8 years. So it is more than 15 years of experience in the UPSC examination. And this experience has taught me a lot of things, which is also very important for me to share this and take it to the students for the larger benefit of the students who are preparing for this examination. Keeping that in mind, I have done a series on how to prepare for the interview. In fact, that series is not like how to prepare for the interview. In fact, I shared my experience. I shared my experience as to how I prepared myself for the interview process, which helped me in actually scoring 200 marks in the interview. That is in the personality test. In fact, scoring 200 marks is not a very easy thing. In fact, only 5 to 10% of the people appearing for the UPSC personality test will get 200 marks. But however, scoring 200 marks is not very difficult, probably if you can plan and if you can execute the things properly. And that is very important that you plan for it and prepare accordingly, which will help you to score that particular mark or maybe even more than that. But however, why I am pointing here is, there's one misunderstanding from most of the students, that is they'll prepare for the interview test probably that once they'll clear their mains examination. Yes, of course, you can do that. I'm not saying that you should not do that. But starting early is going to help you. I would say rather, the moment you make a decision to prepare for the civil service, you should also simultaneously start preparing for the interview test also, for the personality test also. Because as the name suggests, it is not a mere interview, it is more a personality test. And what they are going to test is the personality of an individual. So to alter your personality, say after your mains result, maybe you will have maybe a maximum of 1 or 2 months. If your interview comes probably in the end of the interview schedule, probably you may have 3 to 4 months. But having said that, even 3 to 4 months is a very short period and a very short time to change your personality. It will not work that way. You can score. I'm not saying you will not score. There can be exceptions. But let us not leave it to our luck. Let us plan it, execute it, and score well. So that is why I also made a series on the interview preparation, my journey, my experience as to what I did, what helped me to score 200 marks. So I'd request all the students to go through that particular video. Don't think that you are still in the preliminary stage. It's very important to have an insight as to how to prepare for the interview. An interview is about 275 marks, which is more than any single paper. No paper in UPSC has got what is called as 275 marks today. All the papers are only 250 marks. And it is only the interview which has got 275 marks, where you can score up to 200 marks. No paper will give you 200 marks, and it can entirely change whether you get into the service or not get into the service. Whether you get the desired rank that you want, whether you get the desired state or the cadre that you want, whether you get the desired service that you want. So everything is going to be decided by every single mark that you take in the interview. So don't underestimate the interview. Now, why I am stressing upon the interview is there are many students who are completely unaware of what is expected in a personality test. And because they're not unaware, they keep doing random things and ultimately they don't end up scoring well in the examination. And for the very purpose and to bring a lot of understanding as to what is relevant for UPSC personality test, I've made a series of lectures. So whenever you find time, probably I would say that you allocate time and watch that, give that priority so that you have a broader understanding of what is required for an UPSC personality test, what probably is the understanding of UPSC personality test, what is expected in the test, what should be your do's and don'ts, and how you can plan your preparation. Okay, so I have given my strategy, but probably you can improvise that. You can change according to the individuals because every individual is unique and every individual is different. So that is something that I wanted to tell you. So as we'll proceed, we'll bring in a lot of new initiatives in line with what can help the students in their preparation process. All right. So with that, I'll just get into the topic that we are going to discuss today. So today we are going to cover two important articles, that is Article 29 and Article 30 of the Constitution. So what is this Article 29 and Article 30 of the Constitution? Now both are under the title what is called as the cultural and the educational rights of the minorities. So that is what it says. Now in our previous lectures, we have understand the other major themes. We have, I think till this point of time, we have seen four important themes in the fundamental right. We have seen right to equality. We have seen the right to freedom. We have seen right against exploitation. And also we have seen what is called as the right to freedom of religion. So now the next important theme is the cultural and the educational rights of minorities, under which there are two articles, 29 and Article 30 of the Constitution. Now what is Article 29 of the Constitution is saying? Article 29 is saying that any section of citizens having a distinct language, script or culture shall have the right to preserve the same. That's basically what is called as Article 29. So each and every word in these article becomes very important for us to understand what exactly they are. Anyways, I'll just come back to that particular area as to in a broader sense what Article 29 means. But Article 29 is the protection of interest of minorities, but it is not only for the minorities, but it is for any section of citizens. That is what is a keyword that you have to understand. So is it only for the minorities? No, it is not only for the minorities, it is for any section of citizens. So I'll just come back to that particular area. But whereas on the other hand, Article 30, if you see Article 30 is only for the minorities. Under Article 30 of the Constitution, who shall exercise the fundamental rights? Only the minorities shall exercise the fundamental rights. Under Article 29 of the Constitution, who shall exercise the fundamental rights? Any section of citizens having distinct language, script and culture. So basically we'll try to understand first Article 29, then we'll go to Article 30, then we'll also try to understand as to what is the difference between Article 29 and Article 30 of the Constitution. So we'll try to understand all those things as we'll proceed. So first let us move to what is called as Article 29 of the Constitution. So what is Article 29 of the Constitution is saying? So do not get confused with the title, although the title reads protection of the interest of the minorities. Article 29 is not only for the minorities, but it is for what is called as any section of citizens. So when I say any section of citizens, this is the understanding you should have. It can be a minority or a majority. That is not an issue. So don't think that it is only to the minority. It can be a minority or majority. But any section of citizens, be it minority or majority, residing in any part of India. So they should reside. Whether they are minority or majority, it does not matter. Where they should reside in any part of India. And having a distinct language, script or culture of their own shall have the right to conserve the same. So this is the basic understanding you should have. So the first thing is Article 29 is not only to the minorities, but it is for any section of citizens, and that section of citizens in India should reside where? They have to reside within the territory of India, and we know what is the territory of India under Article 1 of the Constitution. And from the Article 1, you can go to the Schedule 1 of the Constitution where the territory of India is mentioned. So Article 29 is saying any section of citizens residing within the territory of India, that any section of citizens can be a majority or a minority, but that section of citizens, be it a majority or be it a minority, should have a distinct language, script or culture of their own. So what is the condition here? So that any section of citizens that you are talking about under Article 29, they can exercise a right under Article 29, provided they reside anywhere within the territory of India, and they shall also have what? They also shall have distinct language, script and culture. So now the question is, what is this distinct language, script and culture? It should be unique language, script and culture. Say for example, take some of the languages like Tamil, Telugu, Malayalam. So they all have a distinct language, people in these states. Not only they have a distinct language, they have a distinct script also. Script is basically how you write a particular language. So they have a distinct script and their script is unique. So many languages in our country, they do have what is called as a common script. Say for example, Devanagari script is common for many languages in our country. But whereas there are certain languages which is having a distinct, not only distinct language, they have a distinct script also. And then that section of people, that is be it majority or minority, they may have a distinct culture also. So any section of citizens residing anywhere within the territory of India having a distinct language, script or culture. And if they have these things, they have the right to conserve the same. That means they have the right to protect the same. Their distinct language, script or culture, they can protect it. And how they shall protect it? They shall protect it. They shall have the right to conserve the same. That is what the Constitution says. That means the Constitution is not saying a unique method or a unique way as to how it has to be conserved. Suppose if the Constitution is saying this is the way that has to be conserved, so here that is not said. That means you should have an understanding that any section of citizens having a distinct language, script or culture residing within the territory of India shall have the right to conserve the same. And how they shall conserve the same? They can conserve the same by any means, any constitutional means. That means any legal method by which they can conserve their distinct language, script and culture. That's the basic understanding you should have. Now in this regard, I wanted to bring you an example. Say for example, in fact Article 29 is very much related to a particular bull taming sport in the state of Tamil Nadu which is called as Jallikattu. If you see, the sport Jallikattu is a bull taming sport which is followed in the state of Tamil Nadu, and the people of Tamil Nadu have a very close cultural affinity towards this particular sport. Now in fact, why I have taken this as an example is that the Tamil people in India are not minorities. Of course, they are not minorities. There are sufficient people and they are not minorities. And because they are not minorities, you cannot say that they don't exercise the right under Article 29. In fact, the Tamil people have said that they have the right to preserve their distinct language, script and culture. And Jallikattu is part of their culture. And because it is part of their culture and there's a long tradition as to playing this particular sport, the sport Jallikattu has to be preserved and they can preserve it by any means. That is what basically Article 29 is saying. So this bull taming sport, the sport that we follow, is a way that by which we wanted to preserve our culture. In fact, this is the argument that they have put in front of the Supreme Court also. Now, why I am explaining this particular story is few years back, if you go back in 2014, the Supreme Court imposed a ban on the bull taming sport. And what was the reason as to why the Supreme Court imposed this particular ban is the bull taming sport, the way it was performed, or the Jallikattu, the way it was performed, was seen as violative of the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals Act. So there's a law in our country and which is basically trying to prevent any form of cruelty towards animals. But the way the bull taming sport was followed, the animals, the bulls, were subjected to a lot of harsh treatment. And because of which some of the animal activists and the others, they have gone to the court, they have made a petition. And on looking into this particular petition, the Supreme Court imposed a ban. And subsequent to this particular ban, there was a lot of protest in the state of Tamil Nadu, and to that extent, the Tamil Nadu state legislature now has made a modification in the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals Act, and thereby they allowed Jallikattu to function again. But when all these things were happening, it was also argued in front of the courts that Article 29 of the Constitution allows the Tamil people to protect their distinct culture, to protect their distinct language, script, whatever it is under Article 29. But in this context, it was their distinct culture. So to that extent, I am trying to say, although the Tamil people are not minorities, but still they have made this argument. It is because of the fact that Article 29 is not for any section of citizens. Sorry, it is not only for the minorities, but it is for what is called as any section of citizens. But that any section of citizens should come under all these categories. That any section of citizen having a distinct language, script or culture, and if they have this, how they can protect the same? They can protect it by any constitutional means. So that is the basic understanding you should have. Alright, so before I proceed further, so now the Tamil Nadu state legislature has made a law to amend this Prevention of Cruelty to Animals Act. So this animal welfare or the prevention of cruelty to animals is an item in the which list in the 7th schedule of the Constitution. I am sure that some of the students are very beginners, so probably you can avoid this particular question. But if any of the other students who have already completed their polity and probably for revisions or for better knowledge, if you are watching this particular series, you can put it in the comment box. This prevention of cruelty to animals or animal welfare is an item in which list in the 7th schedule of the Constitution. Is it an item in the union list? Is it an item in the state list? Or is it an item in the concurrent list? Okay. So let me see how many of the students are able to answer this particular question. Alright. So with that, we are almost coming to the close of Article 29 of the Constitution. So what is Article 29 is saying? Any section of citizens having a distinct language, script or culture, they shall have the right to conserve the same, be it majority or minority, it does not matter. But however, they should have a distinct language, script and culture, and they should reside within the territory of India. Then they have the right to conserve the same. What is the means by which they can conserve? They can conserve it by any means. And apart from that, there is also one more provision that under Article 29 of the Constitution, no person shall be discriminated when it comes to admission into educational institutions on the grounds of what is called as religion, race, caste or language. That means it is also saying that the people shall not be discriminated on these grounds when it comes to admission into educational institutions. So basically it is of the principle of no discrimination when people are to be admitted into the educational institutions. While on the one hand, article is saying that you have the right to conserve your distinct language, script or culture by any means. But at the same time, you shall not discriminate admissions when it comes to admissions into educational institutions on the grounds of religion, race, caste or language. So this is trying to ensure the principle of what is called as equality. But however, under Article 15 clause 4, we have already seen that reservations can be done to the backward communities, scheduled caste and scheduled tribe in the educational institution. So basically there is an exception. So nothing in Article 15 will prevent what is given under Article 29 clause 2, because that exception is already given under Article 15 of the Constitution. So don't confuse there. If you read the article, you will understand that. So whatever is given in Article 29, if you read it separately, it is okay. But if you read it along with Article 15 clause 4, Article 15 clause 4 will prevail over what is given under Article 29 clause 2. That's a basic understanding you should have. Alright. So with that, we'll just move to Article 30 of the Constitution. Very, very important article. So what is this Article 30? Now, when you talk of minority rights in our country, we have many times read that the minorities under the Constitution of India are given a special protection. And in fact, which article is giving this protection in the Constitution is Article 30. Although Article 29 and Article 30 talks about the right of minorities, as you already said, Article 29 is not only for the minorities. Article 29 is for both minority as well as majority. It is for any section of citizens. So, which is only for the minorities? It is Article 30 of the Constitution. So, Article 30 of the Constitution is providing special protection to the minorities. So, right of minorities to establish and administer educational institution. So, two things that you have to remember with regard to Article 30. I'll explain a lot of other things. First, two things you'll have to understand. So, Article 30 is giving right to the minorities. So, under Article 30, who is having the right? Only the minorities. And what is the right that is given to the minorities? The only right that is given to the minorities is to administer, first to establish and to administer an educational institutions. That means Under Article 30 of the Constitution, the minorities can establish an educational institution, and if they establish an educational institution, and they also have the right to administer that educational institutions according to their choice, according to their wish. That's basically what is the right that is guaranteed under Article 30 of the Constitution. So Article 30 is saying first what? We are giving some right to the minorities, only to the minorities. And what is the right that is given to the minorities? That they can establish, and therefore they can also administer what is called as such educational institutions. And basically such educational institutions will also be given what is called as the minority status or minority educational institutions. Once the educational institutions are given minority educational institutions, they'll have a lot of benefits which I'll subsequently discuss. But right now you should have an understanding that under Article 30 of the Constitution, the minorities can establish and therefore they can administer an education institution. So even with the beginning statement, the differences between Article 29 and Article 30 should be very clear. Article 29 is saying that any section of citizens, which includes both minorities and majorities, but whereas Article 30 is only for the minorities. There, any section of citizens should have a distinct language, script and culture. So here, minorities under Article 30, there is no need that they should have a distinct language, script or culture. But the Constitution is saying that there are two grounds on which the minorities can be identified. These are the only two grounds. There under Article 29, any section of citizens having distinct language, script or culture. Whereas under Article 30, the minorities are to be identified on two grounds. What are the grounds on which the minorities are to be identified? The minorities are to be identified either on the grounds of religion or on the grounds of language. That is either on the grounds of the language that they believe or practice, or either on the grounds of religion that they believe and practice, or on the grounds of the language that they speak. So that is the basis on which the minorities can be identified. So Article 29, any section of citizens, here only minorities, Article 30. There, any section of citizens having distinct language, script or culture, here minorities only having what is called as specific language or religion. So only on the grounds of religion or language. There under Article 29, they can conserve their distinct language, script or culture by any means. But here the means as to how they can preserve is only by establishing and administering an education institution. So the only right that is guaranteed under Article 30 is only to establish and to administer an education institutions. Nothing more than that is guaranteed under Article 30. Whereas under Article 29, the means by which they can protect their distinct language, script or culture, there is no restriction to that. It's very, very broad. That's a basic understanding you should have. But the basic question is that who would be considered to be minorities under Article 30? That's a very basic question we'll have to understand. Who would be considered to be the minorities? That's a question mark. Because although the grounds of identifying the minorities is given, that is either on the grounds of religion or language. But there are different religious people within India. There are different language people in our country. So among those people who would be considered to be minorities is not clearly defined in the Constitution. In fact, who are minorities or the word minorities is not defined in the Constitution. It is only saying primarily the grounds on which the minority shall be identified. That is either on the grounds of what is called as religion or language. So it was a lot of confusion as to who would be considered to be minorities under Article 30. In fact, that is why this matter was interpreted by the Supreme Court of India. So there are a lot of cases, but one such important case is what is called as TMA Pai Foundation versus the State of Karnataka case in 2003. In the TMA Pai Foundation versus State of Karnataka case, the Supreme Court made an interesting observation that while minorities under Article 30 are to be identified either on the grounds of religion or language, but which is to be taken as a geographical unit, whether is it the entire country is to be taken as a geographical unit to confer the minority status, or is it a specific state in which probably the educational institution is to be established, that specific state is to be taken into account for conferring the minority status, be it on the grounds of religion or language. So the Supreme Court has made it very clear under Article 30 of the Constitution, the minority status will be conferred based on what is called as each and every state or a union territory. So the entire territory of India will not be taken as one geographical unit. Each and every state or a specific union territory will be taken as a geographical entity. And within that particular geographical entity, the minority status will be identified on two grounds, either on the grounds of religion or on the grounds of language. This is what has been clarified by the Supreme Court in TMA Pai case. That means try to understand that although there may be a majority throughout the country, any particular religious people or language speaking people, but they can be a minority in a particular state. But still they would be entitled to the benefit of Article 30 of the Constitution. Say for examples, the Muslim could be minority in entire country, but they can be majority, say let us assume, in the state of Jammu and Kashmir. So probably in the state of Jammu and Kashmir, they may not get the benefit. Say for example, the Punjabis might be majorities in the state of Punjab, but they can be minorities, say let us assume, in the state of what is called as, say Karnataka, or say let us assume Andhra Pradesh. So the Punjabi speaking people, if they are in the state of Maharashtra, Karnataka, Andhra Pradesh, Tamil Nadu for that matter, they would be considered to be minorities, and hence if they want to establish an educational institution, that educational institution shall be conferred a minority status, and therefore that educational institutions will have a lot of benefits. I'll discuss that, what are the benefits of conferring a minority status to an educational institution. So that means you should have it very clearly in your mind, what will be taken as a geographical entity while conferring the minority status. It is the geographical territory of a particular state will be taken as a entity, and based on which the minority status will be conferred. Say for example, let us assume the people who are speaking Telugu speaking people might be majority in the state of what is called as Andhra, but however they may be minority in the state of Tamil Nadu, and hence if they wanted to establish an educational institutions in the state of Tamil Nadu, they will be conferred a minority status. So now it should be very clear, what is taken as a geographical entity is only the state and not the entire country. Now the question is, even within a state, who would be considered to be minority? Is it only one particular language or one particular religion would be considered to be minority? No. The Supreme Court made it very clear that any language speaking people or any group of people following a particular religion whose number is less than 50%, that is what is very important. So whose number is less than 50% in terms of religion or language, then they would be considered to be what is called as minorities. That means in religion or language, that means in a particular state, of the total population in that particular state, any language speaking community or any religion following community, and if their strength is less than 50% of the total strength of that particular state, then they would automatically fall in what is called as the minority status. And therefore, if the people belonging to any of this particular community, that is the minority community in that particular state, either on the basis of language or on the basis of religion, if they wanted to establish an education institution, they can establish. And if they establish, then they'll have the right to administer that educational institutions, and that educational institution will also be conferred a minority status. And by conferring a minority status, the educational institutions will have a lot of benefit. That is what basically we'll understand as I'll proceed. What are the benefits that is conferred upon a minority education institutions? And what is the basic fundamental principle behind this particular Article 30? The basic fundamental principle behind this Article 30 is that by allowing the minorities to establish their education institutions, they can take care of the educational requirements, they can take care of preserving the mother tongue of probably a minority language speaking people, so by establishing what is called as an educational institution. So that's the idea. Apart from that, once the people belonging to the minority community, if they establish, then they have the right to administer that educational institution, which will also be conferred the minority status by the government. Now, once a minority status is conferred by the government, that educational institutions will have lot of benefits. Now, what are the benefits that is conferred upon a minority educational institution? Now, first and foremost benefit is there is no interference by the government in number of areas. Say for example, with regard to their administration, with regard to their governing body, who shall be the governing body in such education institutions, with regard to recruitment of their teaching and non-teaching staffs, with regard to the admission process of the children's, the students of course. So in all these areas, the state does not interfere. In each and everything, the state does not interfere, but it is all subject to the larger regulation of the state. Say for example, if there is a law related to what is called as Minimum Wages Act, if there is a law related to what is called as sexual harassment, if there is a law related to what is called as teacher qualification. So these laws will govern, but the state is not going to dictate as to how you have to do all those things. Unless and until you don't violate, you can have your own process, you can follow your own methodology. So the state will not normally interfere in this minority educational institutions. And in fact, the state also does not interfere with regard to the fee structure in these educational institutions, subject to the larger regulation. So that means once a minority educational institution status is conferred, then there's a lot of benefits and entitlement that minority educational institutions shall have. And in fact, the most important benefit that they have is the principle of reservation does not apply in these minority educational institutions. That means if you see the other educational institutions which is not conferred with the status of a minority educational institution, there the other backward caste reservation, scheduled caste reservation, scheduled tribe reservation, today the economically weaker sections reservations, all these reservations will apply. But whereas in the minority educational institutions, these reservations do not apply. The minority educational institutions are exempted from giving these reservations because the very idea as to why the minority educational institution is established is to provide education to the people belonging to the minority community. So they will give preference to the people belonging to the minority community, either on the basis of language or on the basis of religion. So depending upon on what criteria that educational institution got the minority status, they can give privilege to those people. So that is why the right under Article 30 becomes so important. That helps the minorities to establish and to administer their educational institutions. Now recently there was one judgment that was given by Supreme Court with regard to the Aligarh Muslim University. The Supreme Court, in fact, in a latest judgment said that the Aligarh Muslim University would continue to have what is called as the minority status. And that is because of the fact the Supreme Court is convinced just because a law was enacted, the Aligarh Muslim University will not be deprived of its minority status. In fact, this Aligarh Muslim University, whether it is a minority university or not, it was subject to question of law for a long period of time. Now the Supreme Court has clarified this. Now this is basically what you'll have to understand with regard to what is called as right under Article 30 of the Constitution. Now before I complete this particular article, there's one more thing that you have to discuss. Okay, Article 30 of the Constitution is saying what? Article 30 of the Constitution is saying that the minorities in India, either on the basis of religion or on the basis of language, they have a special right under Article 30, only the minorities. And minorities, they will have the right to establish and to administer the educational institutions, minorities either on the grounds of religion or language. Only when they establish, they can administer it. Now the question is it possible for the government to take away the property of these minority educational institutions? Can the government compulsorily acquire the property of the minority educational institutions? Today, yes, the government can acquire the property of the private individuals. There is no problem with regard to that. But a due process has to be followed. It is not that forcibly the property of a private individual can be taken away. After following a due process, the property of a private individual can be taken away. Is it possible for the state to acquire the property of the minority educational institutions? That's my question. So if you look into Article 30 of the Constitution, it makes it very clear that the state can take the property of the minority educational institutions as well. It is not that their property cannot be taken away, but then the only thing that the state has to ensure is if they are trying to take away the property of a minority educational institution, a full compensation has to be given to the educational institution. A full compensation has to be given in that particular regard so that the right of the minorities are not compromised. When I say full compensation, they are fully compensated for the property or the land that has been taken away so that they can establish the same institutions in certain other places. But whereas on the contrary, when the state is taking away the property of a private individual who is not a minority or a minority educational institution, when the state is taking away the property of a private individual and not that of a minority educational institution, in that particular case, there is no need for the state to provide what is called as full compensation. The state shall give only what is called as fair compensation. So there's a lot of difference between what is called as fair compensation and what is full compensation. Full compensation means maybe up to the market value, but fair compensation does not mean a market value for the property that they are taking away. Fair compensation is what is fairly valued. But whereas full compensation is according to the market value. So that's a basic difference that you have to understand. So don't have this misunderstanding that the property of the educational institutions, that is a minority educational institutions, cannot be taken away. It can be taken away, but with full compensation, without compromising on the right. So there are few key points that you have to probably remember under Article 30 of the Constitution. So first is Article 30 of the Constitution, there is no definition of what is called as minorities. What is the ground on which the minorities are identified? The minorities are identified on the grounds of religion or language. And which religion and which language speaking people are considered to be minorities? The state shall be taken as a geographical entity in deciding this. And within a state, who would be considered to be minorities? Any language or religious practicing people whose population is less than 50% in that particular state. That means although they can be majority throughout India, but still they can be minority in a particular state. So they can be majority in a particular state, even though they are minority in India, but if they are majority in a particular state, still they may not get the benefit of Article 30. So these are all the basic things that you have to understand. So once, as per this particular definition given by the Supreme Court, they fall within the status of minority, then the people belonging to this minority, any individual or a group of people, then they establish an educational institution. Only when they establish, they will also have the right to administer such educational institutions. And they will not only have the right to establish and administer, they can establish and administer without unnecessary interference from the state. And also in such educational institutions, they do not have the right to reserve seats for the people belonging to scheduled caste, scheduled tribe, other backward caste or EWS reservation. They can reserve seats to people belonging to the minority community. That is very much possible. So this is basically what is Article 30 of the Constitution. So I'm quite sure that you are clear as to what is Article 29 and Article 30. Let me just quickly summarize difference between Article 29 and Article 30. Article 29 is for any section of citizens, whereas Article 30 only for minorities. Article 29, any section of citizens having distinct language, script or culture. Here minorities only on the grounds of religion or language. What is the means by which they can protect under Article 29? Any means. And what is the means under Article 30? The only means is administering, establishing and then administering an educational institution. So these are all the basic differences that you have to understand. Can the property of the minority education institution, can it be acquired by the state? Yes, by paying what is called as full compensation. So these are all the basic information that you should definitely remember. Very, very important article, especially for your prelims examination. So with that, we'll go to the practice question. So before I go to the practice question, in fact, it was in the PA Inamdar versus State of Maharashtra case, the Supreme Court made it very clear that the policy or the principle of reservation does not apply in a minority education institution. So they don't have to reserve seats for the backward community or the scheduled caste, the scheduled tribe or the economically weaker sections. All right. So please come to the practice question. Consider the following. Look into the question. The Constitution of India recognizes only only religious minorities, B, only linguistic minorities, religious and linguistic minorities, religious, linguistic and ethnic minorities. So what is the correct answer? You can put the answers in the comment box. If you have any questions or queries related to this particular lecture, you can reach out to me through my Telegram channel or through my Instagram account. And I'm quite sure that each and every single video that has been made in this particular series is going to be immensely beneficial to the students preparing for the competitive examination. So one humble request is, if you have any friends or family members preparing for UPSC or any of the other competitive examination, do refer these videos to them. And also do suggest people to watch the videos that I've made on how to prepare for the personality test, because a lot of students do not have any kind of, I would say, prior knowledge, because a lot of students do not have the awareness as to what is expected in an UPSC interview. So they end up not doing well despite their best talents. And those videos will give you a lot of insights as to how one has to prepare for the UPSC personality test. So with that, I'll wind up my lecture. Thank you very much. Keep watching. All the best.